All right, so today we're talking about the blame game. And unfortunately, in the trucking business, in the freight broker business, that comes with the territory. That happens from time to time. And when it does, you and I as freight brokers need to be prepared for that. We need to know how to handle that situation appropriately. For example, let's say a load flips. When a load flips, I simply mean that the load shifted on the pallets, or maybe the pallet may have flipped over. And when that happens, a restack fee comes into play, and sometimes your shipper will be looking to blame the carrier or blame you perhaps because their relationship is with you. And then what you need to do is to be able to look at that situation and determine who's at fault, not just simply say it's on the carrier. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what your responsibilities are when those situations occur, when problems occur with the load, and how you should handle it. So come on inside and let's get down to business. Before we get too far in this video, I think it's important to understand, why is it that shippers hire freight brokers? Why don't they just go direct to carriers? Because they very well could. They could just go to direct to carriers and eliminate the use of a freight broker. Well, they use freight brokers for a reason. They use you as an intermediary, as somebody that is between them and the carrier. So now they don't have to deal with all of the things that come with load movement. You are the problem solver. You are the person that they can point to and say, what's going on with my load? They don't have to try and find out what's going on with carriers. That's your responsibility. They can focus on their core responsibilities instead of being in the weeds trying to, deal with load movement on a day in and day out basis. They are not just hiring you as a freight broker to move loads. They could hire a carrier to do that. You are the problem solver. So make sure that you understand that from the word go. Understand what your responsibilities are, so when those times come to you, you can handle them like a freight broker handles them. Because in my opinion, you really aren't a freight broker until you have a problem. Until you have a problem with loads. Because yes, it's great to have loads that you pick up and you drop off. I love those loads. As a matter of fact, probably 60% of the loads that I do are just pick up, drop off, no problem. But there are loads that will require you to use those problem solving skills that you've developed. And how you handle those problems will determine if you get the opportunity to handle bigger problems as you move forward. Don't just sell your carrier out because you're trying to gain favor with the shipper. Your carrier is the reason why you have a service. You wouldn't have a service, you wouldn't be able to pick up loads and drop off loads successfully if it wasn't for the carrier. It's his asset. So we need to give him the proper due diligence to make sure that we're assigning responsibility in the right way, not just based off of what the shipper says. Your carrier is your customer, just like your shipper is your customer. Make sure we treat him in that way. So now I don't want you to think that I'm saying that the freight broker is the final authority and he is the one that assigns responsibility should the shipper or the carrier. But what I am saying is sometimes we can stop the fire before it gets started. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So now we're moving a load. As a matter of fact, we're contracted to move this load. It's a 300-mile load. We move it every week, and we haven't been having any problems with it. Then all of a sudden, the load started shifting on the pallet. Some of the loads flipped. When that first started happening, the shipper was saying, okay, well, I'm not sure what exactly happened here. This is maybe something on our end. We'll go ahead and pay the restack fee, thinking that it was a one-time thing, and we will go ahead and move on from it. But it happened again the next week, happened again that week after that. And now the facility that we were taking that load to were upping the price for the charge. They started out charging $300 for the restack fee, and then it went to $800. The reason why that was is because you're bringing a truck every week and they're having to restack that whole truck. That's going to cause a problem. That's going to cause for them to have to put people on that. And that was just becoming a headache. So they start charging $800 every time that load flipped. So now it gets the shipper's attention. So the shipper started saying, hey, we believe that this is a problem caused by the carrier. We don't know if he's securing the load properly, driving recklessly, hitting on brakes, but we don't think that this is a problem on our end. So we're not going to continue to pay for the restack fee that comes with this load. Now, after the first time that this had happened, I had already started talking to carriers, making sure that they put load locks throughout the load. Now, usually carriers only have a few load locks, 2 maybe, and they'll put a load lock in the middle and then a load lock on the end to make sure that the load is secured. Well, what I asked this particular carrier to do was to put load locks throughout the load. Since we were having so many problems with it shifting, put them all the way throughout the load. So he did that, and he took pictures as he placed those load locks. So the next time it shifted, I sent those pictures to the shipper to make sure that he could see that those load locks were on the load. Well, after it flipped again, now we realize this is not necessarily a problem with the carrier, but we do need to find out where the problem is. So we went back to the pickup facility and start trying to find out what happened here, what's going on with this particular load, why is this the only load that's flipping, because we're moving other loads out of the facility and we're not having any problems with it. And what we ended up finding out is that this was not a problem with the carrier. The carrier wasn't driving recklessly, wasn't hitting on brakes to cause the loads to flip. What actually happened was the manufacturer changed the boxes that they used to ship the product in. They used to ship large boxes, then they went to a smaller box. When they went to that smaller box, it wouldn't tie off on the pallet correctly. Even when you put shrink wrap around it, put load locks on it, it still wouldn't hold on those pallets. It kept shifting and moving. And it didn't matter much how you were driving, the load was still going to shift in transit because those boxes were just too small. So we figured out that it wasn't with the carrier. If we had listened to the shipper without doing the proper due diligence, then we would have been trying to charge the carrier for something that he should not be charged for. When you don't know, you have to look behind the curtain to figure out what's going on. You are not going to know every situation. Things are going to happen as loads move, and sometimes you're not going to know exactly what to do. But when you start to look into the situation and study it to understand what should happen, then you can come up with a better answer. But just to take what the shipper says and run with it would be the wrong answer, because it sets your carrier up for failure. At least in this situation it would. The most important thing that I want you to take from this video is that everybody is always trying to cover their own butts. We are in the business of taking a look at the situation and assigning a responsibility based off of what happened, not based off of what someone says. If we just take what the shipper says, if we just take what the carrier says, we're always going to be looking at half of the story. We need to get what the shipper says, what the carrier says, and look at the entire picture of what's going on and make an informed decision based on the actual facts. Remove emotion from the situation and deal exactly with what the facts are. Then you make the best decision that's going to turn out best for you, the carrier, and the shipper. We have that responsibility as freight brokers to give our customers what they are due. In this particular situation, they are due the proper research. Once we did that, we found out who was at fault. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you want to learn more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a link in the description. It's my 5-video series titled How the Load Movement Process Works. It will give you a look into the freight broker business, let you see how it works before you make a decision. That way you make a decision in the light instead of in the dark. And also, if you want to learn more about what you say to shippers, where you start your conversation, I'll leave a free link right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded.